Let's wait a bit while everyone comes in.
Good morning, Mr. Eddie Turner. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Let's Coach Masterclass. Today's topic is what makes generational coaching powerful, by our very distinguished expert, Eddie Turner, all the way from Houston, Texas. It's a great pleasure to have you here with us. The Let's Coach Masterclass is a monthly activity organized by CCMC Alumni Club. CCMC stands for Certified Chief Master Coach at ITD World. This is also part of ITD World's Love the World initiative and 100 Million Leaders mandate, with its purpose to bring sponsored coaching programs and solutions to 100 million leaders all over the world. And this is one such initiative. Thank you all so much for being part of this. I'd like to say a big thank you to our CCMC Club alumni committee members, led by our president, Mr. Guy Rouse. He's right here with us. And of course, our vice presidents, Gregory, Rick, Angela, Floris, and Multi. Thank you so much for all the great work and contribution that all of you are making to the CCMC. So right now, I would like to hand over the torch to the president of our CCMC alumni, Mr. Guy Rouse, who will introduce our speaker for today. Let's give a big hand to Mr. Guy Rouse.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, as always, Dr. Peter, for the welcome, and a big special thanks to ITD World, as always, for sponsoring the CCMC Alumni Masterclass. As you mentioned, the CCMC Alumni is a group of master coaches who want to grow coaching culture everywhere. And through the Let's Coach Masterclass, we continue to grow our coaches and share the value of coaching to the world. So, as always, we encourage everyone, just write your name in the chat box, tell us where you're from, and just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. And for today, I wanted really to introduce to you today's masterclass speaker, Eddie Turner. Eddie Turner is an in-demand leadership development expert. He is changing the face of leadership as a principal consultant and an executive coach at Linkage. Linkage is an international leadership development firm. Eddie's a certified speaking professional and ranked number 6 in the top 30 listed motivational speakers by the global gurus. Forbes recognized Eddie as a preeminent authority on emerging leaders, and he's ranked number 18 on the top 25 thought leaders in Leadership by Thinking 360. And he's ranked number 32 in the power list of the top 200 voices in leadership to watch this year. A very impressive profile, and we're very, very fortunate to have Eddie Turner here. Now, with the potential of almost 7 generations around in the workplace today, and from the greatest generation in the early 1900s all the way to the latest Alpha Gen Alpha, with all their peculiarities and the strengths, makes it a real, true mixing pot of opportunity. Now, Eddie will show us the keys to unlocking that great potential, which is so many organizations miss out there. So hold on to your virtual seats, prepare to be impressed by Eddie as he explains to us what makes multi-generational coaching powerful. A very warm welcome, Eddie. Good morning to you, and over to you.
Guy, thank you so much for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And what a joy to be here. I see this list of folks from all over the world here. Bangkok is Gregory, Nienke from Netherlands, Sarah Lee from the Philippines. We've got Angeline in Sydney, Vietnam, Malaysia, Malta, and even someone from Chicago. Wow, what an audience, and what a delight to be here to talk about what makes multi-generational coaching powerful. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and I'll ask you, Guy, to confirm that you are able to see my screen.
There we go. You can see it.
You can see it? Excellent. Well, as Guy said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Eddie Turner, and I am the Leadership Accelerator. I work with leaders to accelerate their performance and drive impact. I do that primarily through executive coaching, masterful facilitation, and keynote speeches. I'm also a former podcast host and the author of a best-selling international book. However, I now work for Linkage. When they originally asked me to come and speak with you all, I was still independent, but I joined Linkage, and Linkage has as its mission changing the face of leadership. And that resonated with me because the opportunity to get more people into leadership positions through the work of Linkage, and even what you all are doing at ITD World, it matters to give others opportunities. And so I'm really passionate about the work that I'm doing there. What a pleasure to be here with you all again. I can't tell you all how excited. I could barely sleep last night. Now, I know it's evening for you all, but it's the start of the day for me. And I couldn't sleep just knowing that I had the opportunity to be here. I can't wait to visit you all one day in person there in Southeast Asia. But for now, I'm just happy to be here with you all virtually and give you a virtual hug all the way from Houston. I want to say a special thank you to Gregory and Jalbert and Guy Rouse for inviting me to be here with you all, and also to Dr. Peter Chi for his leadership of the organization and for his support online, as well as Aaron Ngui, Cyril Alcaraz, and Frank Koo for their support and their publicizing this event online. Also, we're not going to forget about the folks who aren't just tied into this session directly. We're broadcasting this session to YouTube and LinkedIn, and I believe Facebook. And you can look at Dr. Chi's LinkedIn account where he's streaming it live. If you're not following Dr. Chi and these folks I just mentioned, if you're not following ITD World because this is your first event, please follow them on social media. And if you're watching the live stream, hit that share button. Hit that share button so that your friends and colleagues can tune in and be a part of this discussion with us. I'd like to invite you all to put your questions in the chat right away. You don't have to wait. I'm going to try to keep my eye on it over here on my screen, and let me know what your reaction is even to what I'm saying. If you don't agree, if you agree, tell me in the chat, okay? And if you do that, that means we can have a nice interactive discussion. If you'd like to have your voice heard, I welcome that as well. I know I am far from the only expert in this room. I've seen some of the folks that are going to be a part of this. You are some of the top coaches and top leaders in the world. I want to hear from you, and let's bring your stories into this discussion. If you agree, can you give me a Y in the chat? There we go. I see a couple coming in there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Fantastic. Oh, someone gave me 3 Ys, 4 Ys. Frank Koo gave me 4 Ys. Excellent. So that's a resounding yes from Frank. I appreciate that, Frank. Excellent. What? What is a powerful word in coaching? One of the first lessons we learn is that what turns an ordinary question into a powerful question. And that's because what acts like a search engine on the brain. The listener receives that question very differently. Now, this is especially true when, as Merriam-Webster's dictionary informs us, that it is used as an interrogative pronoun, meaning we are asking a question in search of information. For example, what is the reason you said that is interpreted far differently from why did you say that? Going a step further, the word what can also be used as a relative pronoun. When it's used as a relative pronoun, that means we're talking about the item. We're being very specific about something. For example, what day is the event? Well, we're not asking in general, we're looking for a very specific response. That being the case, ladies and gentlemen, this powerful yet simple word has impact on our discussion. When we say what makes multi-generational coaching powerful, we're not asking a question. We're not asking a question because we know the answer. We are actually talking about the thing, the concept, the principle that works. So we will highlight what very specifically makes multi-generational coaching powerful. And it's an answer that everyone needs. Now, many of my speeches I've given multiple times. This is actually only the second time I've given this particular speech. The first time I gave it was for the International Coaching Federation in 2020. They actually picked this title. They recognized that this is an issue around the world in coaching. So they picked the title and asked me to develop the material. So this is only the second time that I'm sharing this. So I'm excited to be able to share this again because I really believe in this based on the work that I've done in organizations around the world. Why? We move to why. Why is this important for us to discuss today? Well, Guy alluded to this in his opening comments. As we look at 21st century organizations, they're more diverse than ever. We have a lot of age groups in the workforce, more than we've ever seen. Different employee composition is in part due to being staffed with these different people in our organizations. And this unique dynamic creates a need to unearth the maximum potential from every individual in the organization to allow them to reach their desired impact on the organization and grow their careers. Multi-generational coaching is a powerful tool to answer this demand. Let's talk about these shifts. According to the Harvard Business Review, for the first time ever, there are 5 generations of employees in the workforce. Now, think about that impact. Think about what that means when you are interacting. And we should say, not just in the workforce. We're talking about also in our community organizations, our places of worship, anywhere you have a group of people, even here in our ITD world, right? You have multi-generations interacting with each other. What's the impact? Well, leading and performing are defined very differently. For example, the need to know why a specific request is being made at work. In the old days, if a senior leader asked you to do something, you just did it. Today, with the different generations, they don't automatically just do it because you're the boss. They want to know why. They want the rationale behind it. Now I'm going to look over to the screen here and I want to know, am I right? Or is that just me? Is that just my experience? I see Peter smiling. Greg's giving me a thumbs up. So you've experienced that, right? It's not just because you said it. Yeah. So Sarah Lee, she's shaking her head as well. And Flores is telling me in the chat that this is very true. So thank you. So that's what we see happening, folks. So just the idea that someone is older, wiser, or in a position of authority doesn't mean that people are automatically going to listen to them. Also, we understand that leadership models have changed. In yesteryear, there was a pecking order of sorts, right? Leadership from the top down. You had earned your stripes, as it were. And therefore, because of your time in the organization, your time in the field, your time in the business, you had a right to expect to be at a certain level, and everyone else had to listen to you because of positional authority. Well, there are new leadership models that have come about. In the chat, please share with me leadership models that you operate based on. And I'll pause very briefly. Dr. Chi says the leadership challenge is what he uses. Holacracy, says Greg. Freedom to choose, says KC. Situational leadership, says Sarah Lee. Frank says authentic leadership. Situational leadership, says Farah. Coaching leadership, GWR, and leader as coach. Excellent. So these are all very good models of leadership that were not always around. So these new frameworks that people are learning affect the expectation that employees have when they enter into these organizational settings. So for example, Dr. Ronald Heifetz from Harvard's Kennedy School is the father of adaptive leadership. Keith Ferrazzi, Robin Sharma, these folks have popularized the concept of leading without authority, leadership without titles. And so the newer generations are coming along saying, hey, listen, I can be a leader. I don't have to wait until I have authority. I can exercise authority now. And in some cases, that's a really good thing. But in other cases, we see sometimes there's a struggle with generational attitudes and cultural norms when it comes to that, right? So as leadership models have changed across the generations in time, so have the expectations of people changed. I think the other thing that we've seen happen is that when it comes to performance, there was a time that you were judged based on your face time in the office. How early were you there? Were you the first one there? Were you the last one to leave? Now FaceTime is just a cool app on mobile phones, right? People are saying, no, don't judge me by my time in the office. Judge me on my productivity. Judge me on my output. It's a different shift, right? And certainly because of the pandemic, it's accelerated this desire to not even be in the office, right? We work remotely, and now there's this new concept of lifestyle working. So I'm going to work from any country that I want to, any city that I want to, and not even be in the main city, but still be able to be productive. So that's affected people's attitudes. The definition of coaching itself has changed. There was no ICF or IT World, right? So coaching definitions have changed over the years. Most people's first interaction with the word coach was stagecoach, right? The idea of moving people from one place to another with a horse and a coach. Later on, it became maybe in the world of sports. Now, of course, we've matured in the definition of coaching and certainly along with its application. Finally, we would say that generations are not just about age. So as we have this discussion, we have to keep in mind it also is about the values, as I've alluded to, and a mindset. So each generation has held certain things near and dear and established a code of living for everyone else. And then we see the next generation change and adopt new values and say, well, I don't want to live by these anymore. As you have that progression, you have these shifts. Does this make sense? Give me a yes in the chat. Give me a Y. Give me an N, and give me a question mark if you're not sure, and that's okay. Just to do a check in here. Good, good, good. Excellent. Thank you. So we've been talking about generations. What does that really mean? Well, there's the American generations. These are the phrases that we've used, and this source comes from CNN. So let's talk about what they really mean. Well, the first generation, Tom Brokaw, a famous American journalist, termed as the greatest generation. These were the folks that fought in the First World Wars, and these folks were the GI generation, born in 1924 or earlier. Then there was the silent generation, born in 1925 to 1945. These were traditionalists. And then you'll see generation W, X, Y, Z, and now we're starting to see appear generation AA. Okay. So the whole notion of generations came about from the work of two sociologists named William Strauss and Neil Howe. And they wrote the book, literally called Generations. And they argued that basically what you see is this shift that I referred to in the previous slide happen every 18 to 25 years, right? So what does this mean? When we're talking about coaching, remember we talked about those values, those morals, or those norms that shift? Well, someone has to teach that to the next generation if they're to live on, or to adapt. So each generation helps the next generation. That does not mean, however, that coaching is a one-way street. Multi-generational coaching is actually a two-way street. What do I mean? It's not always the case that the older person or senior person coaches the younger person, teaches the younger person, trains the younger person. No, in many cases, that is what happens. But in a great number of cases, it's actually reciprocated by the younger generation. Can anyone think of an example where a younger person might actually be coaching a senior person? You can tell me in the chat, or you can tell me audibly. Nienke, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, she says digital skills. Excellent. Thank you. Z says technology. Absolutely. How many times is it social media? Yes, yes, yes. Gregory says current trends. Yeah, we're seeing several people put it there. Emotional skills, says Rick. Very good. Frank says design thinking. Farah, if I'm saying that correctly, says digital technology and innovations. Ooh, Angeline, she says AI. Yes, all of these come into play. So the more senior person may say, let me teach you about the business. Let me teach you about life, right? And let me coach you so that you may be able to progress up the corporate ladder, grow your career. That younger person might say, okay, excellent. Let me help you with your technology. Let me help you with your social media profile. And the senior executive may say, well, I don't need a social media profile. And the younger person might be able to say, here's why you need a strong LinkedIn presence. Here's why. You may not need Facebook, you may not need a Snapchat, but here's why you absolutely need LinkedIn, and let me help you build that out. Or these other technologies, as Angeline talks about, we're going to speak to that later. AI, artificial intelligence, right? Now, that's where we're talking about the benefit here. So we want to be able to identify what these generations are and be able to navigate them. Now, I can't remember having spoken directly in Asia before. I know I've coached some folks, but I didn't remember if I'd spoken to an audience in Southeast Asia. So I wanted to know, are these terms used in Southeast Asia? So I did some research and I found out that yes, they are. I found that McKinsey has done some research. McKinsey & Company, a very famous consulting firm, international consulting firm, and they wrote a piece about what makes Asia Pacific's Generation Z different. And so they walked through, they used the terms. So I said, okay, I'm safe. I can use those phrases and everybody will know what I mean, correct? Was that right? So, but now their research on this was for consumer research. All right. They want to know, what are the shopping trends? What are folks buying and how are their buying patterns? So I looked at it and A, it confirmed that I could use the terms, but B, I'm looking at the data through the lens of our discussion today. Does it make sense when we're talking about multi-generational coaching? Here's why I think it matters. What they brought up is that by 2025, Generation Z will make up a quarter of Asia Pacific's population. That's Generation Z. Generation Z, however, is not like the millennials. They are entering adulthood during a global pandemic. Now, think about what that means in terms of, they're talking about this in terms of consumer research, but we're thinking about this in terms of coaching. All right. How many of you are raising children who all they've known is the pandemic? I have to put my hand up because I became a father during the pandemic. So up until about a couple of weeks ago, all my daughter has ever seen are folks in masks. Now we've started to kind of relax the rules here at her school. They've actually stopped wearing the mask. So now she's able to see her teacher's face for the first time. She's 14 months, so she's in daycare, but she's able to see her teacher's face for the first time. She's able to see her classmates, I'm not gonna say colleagues, her classmates for the first time. And so we think about just the small difference that makes in terms of a connection, being able to connect to another human being. And remember, we couldn't even touch each other at first, right? So think about what children were deprived of during that time period, the affection, right? And some of our elderly senior citizens, right? I think about moms and grandparents who were denied that affection, which is so important. And what happens when you don't have the ability to see that other person smile back at you, right? So those simple things that we maybe took for granted, they actually affect how people develop. A lot of people will need coaching coming out of the pandemic just because, as someone talked about earlier, I think it was Frank, their emotional skills, that's Rick, their emotional skills are lacking, right? They never develop certain things because of this. The last point that they made is that by 2025, Generation Z and millennials would compose half of APAC's consumers. Well, knowing that half by 2025 will be the composition tells us something as coaches, right? Tells us who the target audience will be, but it also tells us something that we need to be aware of as coaches, all right? Now, what does that translate to? Well, ICF undertook a tremendous research study, the first of its kind in 2020. They commissioned a study that really incorporated not just their research, their audience, but they went to the other major coaching entities around the globe. And they gathered 22,500 responses from coaches, managers, and leaders in over 161 different countries. And what they did is they had PricewaterhouseCoopers, very prestigious, well-known auditing firm, do all this legwork. And that outgrowth of that was this 2020 ICF Global Coaching Study. And what I love about it as a coaching practitioner is it answers some of the questions that we're going to talk about right now. Who is the consumer of coaching? What's the average age of those folks? What's the average age of the folks delivering the coaching? Okay, so one of the things you'll see here is they actually use a similar chart to what I used. They're from CNN. They put this in their report. And they said that with the exception of North America, the majority of coach practitioners are Generation X. Isn't that something? That means most of the time they're coaching people who are senior to them, right? And the majority of the coaches globally, millennials were just 1 in 10 of the coaching practitioners. And then they give you some data about Eastern Europe. Okay. Going a step further, we look at the clients. The typical coaching client is between 35 and 44 years old. That was 37%. Just under 1 in 3 clients were between 45 and 54. And then around 1 in 4 were 35 years old. That's the data that they had at that time. Now that has changed a little bit over the last couple of years, and it's also changed because of a project that has been undertaken that I'm going to share with you in just a moment. What questions do you have for me at this time? Just pausing to do a check-in. Is this data surprising? Is it new? Is it something that you already were aware of? Please tell me in the chat. Rick is already aware of this, not news. Thank you, Rick. New to Farah. What is coaching consumption? No, I'm not aware of it at this level. Okay, thank you, Hans. Aware at the different levels, says Martin. KC, when you are asking what is coaching consumption, are you asking what type of coaching they're consuming, or are you asking me about the demographic? Oh, what are they being coached on? They are being coached on what? I'd have to go back to the data to tell you specifically what they're being coached on. I was just looking at the actual demographics of it, but the study looked at all aspects of it. So obviously, we look at the biggest or probably most popular part of coaching in general tends to be life coaching, or as ICF calls it, professional development coaching. Executive coaching, of course, is the most expensive, and in the business world, the most popular. But if you were to look at the aggregate overall, probably life coaching comes in at number one. And which one has the purchasing power? Zorena is asking. It would definitely be executive coaching, because that's where the higher margin is. And that's where most businesses are willing to pay. However, we see obviously that when it comes to, even when we look at what life coaching even charges, there's a different number, different price point of entry. So folks who are able to do more volume might be able to do as well as an executive coach, but typically the executive coaching space is a higher margin space because of who the client is and who the paying organizations are.
So Eddie, this is Casey here. Thank you, for sharing a very data-driven presentation. So I guess, as you alluded, perhaps it's already in the coaching study in the publication, but what struck me is the consumption in terms of the 24%, 30%, and 37% needs clarity around what is the 24% of the under 35 looking for from their coaching experience. So like you said, are they being coached more, in terms of driving the business? Are they being coached, in terms of, life balance, in terms of managing health and stress? So it'll be fascinating, to again contrast what the 35-year-olds are looking for from their coaches, as opposed to the 44-year-olds are looking for. So that would be a very good contrast. How and when can we get this coaching report?
Casey, thank you for speaking loud to give me more clarification. I appreciate that. It's nice to see you there. I love your virtual background, by the way. And this coaching report is available on the ICF website. So this is available by going to coachingfederation.org. And I can actually just type that into the chat for you there. So coachingfederation.org. And if you just type in that ICF Global Coaching Study, this is available for download.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. And yes, so typically when you're looking at, for example, around 1 in 4 under 35 getting the coaching, Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner, in their landmark book, The Leadership Challenge, they're in their 6th edition of that book. And one of the things they say in that book that they've revised, and they've been studying this for 30 years, and they just keep revising that book with new data and new content, is that on average, the average leader goes 10 years before they ever receive any leadership training. And for most folks, that's also the time where they get their first coaching experience. So I would submit to you that without interrogating this data further, by opening up the study again to get that analysis, that you're probably talking about that first level manager who's already been leading and now getting this official executive coaching or leadership coaching at their place of employment. Does that make sense? Thank you. I'm looking over there. Okay, and then I saw any major finding from different groups from Ann. And I hope I answered your question, Rick, about the growth areas. Thank you. Someone, Tarek, thank you for posting the link to that in the chat. So now what ways does this show up? The options for coaching. Well, we see human to human is always the most popular, right? Well, what do we mean by that? Well, there's virtual coaching, which before the pandemic was not always the most popular option. I coached at a couple of universities. In fact, I'm still at one. And even for the younger folks who we started allowing coaching to, millennials and the younger generations, 18 to 24 years old, we thought that these digital natives who've always known the internet, they would want face-to-face coaching, which is, you know, the in-person option, which is the most popular. But no, they didn't want virtual. They preferred in-person coaching. And so that was a shock when that data came back. And I think basically what we realized is they spend so much of their lives virtual, digital options, that this is the first time that they actually connect to another person. Some of them weren't even connecting to their parents, but they're now connecting with their coach. And amazing results came from that. So virtual and in-person, and of course, because of the pandemic, we've all gone virtual. And some of us are going back to face-to-face. But virtual has obviously taken on new meaning. Earlier, someone mentioned AI, right? So technology becomes the other generational option. Artificial intelligence, it's making a difference. Much like WebMD changed medicine, where people started to actually go to WebMD to get answers before going to their physician. And because it asks you a couple of different questions and then gives you a general idea of what you may be facing and what you can do about the situation. Well, that's what's happened with coaching. Only with WebMD, they have to give you the disclaimer. This is just a guide. Please go see a medical professional. This is not a substitute. Not the case with coaching, right? We have an unlicensed industry. So there's no disclaimer that's needed on those websites where coaching via AI is becoming a viable solution for many people. So much so, it's kind of like this cartoon that I once saw. I already diagnosed myself on the internet. I'm only here to see you, doctor, for a second opinion, right? And so some of us may start to find that to be the case with our clients. And of course, the famous Apple phrase, there's an app for that. So a lot of people are turning to coaching apps for a very similar reason, right? If it's not on a website driven by AI, there are apps that people use for coaching. And then online organizations and the massive effort to democratize coaching, whereas in most organizations, the big money is spent at the top, giving face-to-face coachings to executives and the next level in an organization. To push it to lower levels of the organization, you've had organizations like Better Up, Coaching Hub, ASAP, and so many others offer coaching online at significantly reduced prices to make it available to everyone in the organization. So on one hand, it's a good thing for the coaching world. More people are experiencing the power of coaching. And on the other hand, it does put pressure on the prices that we as coaches need to earn our livings. So there's good news and bad news on both sides, right? But these are the options that people have, and based on price in some cases, but based on generational preference in others, that's the decision that people are making for their coaching solutions. So we need to be aware of these options. Now, other generational changes. I've alluded to this, but now I want to talk about this a little bit further. I spent about 4 years at the Rice University in Houston, Texas. They created a Door Institute. And these images are with me and a couple of the students at different times there at the Door Institute. John and Ann Door went to Rice University and fell madly in love. They were engineers. Well, they graduated and went on to become amazingly successful. They both returned back to Rice and got engineering degrees. So they have master's degrees and undergraduate degrees from Rice in engineering. John will later on go on to Harvard and get an MBA in business. He and his wife became billionaires because essentially any of the large tech firms in Silicon Valley, they all were advised by and funded by Ann and John Doerr's company. So they became billionaires and decided to turn back to Rice University. He became a big believer in coaching. They initially in 2010 donated $10 million to the engineering school because they recognized that, hey, these kids are wickedly smart, but they don't necessarily present themselves well. He said, give these folks coaching, coach all the engineers. It worked so well that 5 years later, he and his wife went back and they made a $50 million donation to Rice University. And they said, turn every student on campus into a leader. So because of Ann and John Doerr, every student at Rice University, it's a campus of about 6,000 students, has access to a professional certified ICF executive coach. Now, they said, we don't believe in buildings. They didn't want a building named after them. That's the first idea that folks wanted to do. They said, we believe in people. So there's no building on campus with their name, but the institute is called the Ann and John Doerr Institute for New Leaders. And in this institute, where they provide coaching for the 18-year-old on campus, all the way up to the senior students, we saw major transformations. I saw in my first year, I worked with a young man who had come to America from China. He had never been to the States before. So all the way from China, leaving his parents, and I'm coaching him. And it occurs to me just while we're having a conversation one day, I just asked him, I said, what are you eating? Because I could tell he was going through a lot. You were away from mom and dad for the first time, very far away. And I could just see his face light up like, yeah, I'm really not liking this food, right? Having a tough time even adjusting to simple things like that. So we had a great relationship. We developed a bond over the course of that semester. And because of our coaching relationship, he was able to do some transformational things at Rice, even in that first semester. And he credited the coaching as a part of that. So talk about generational coaching, right? To take a young man like that and to do wonders for his career. I would see him again on campus as I was wrapping up my time there, and he was graduating. And he was so excited, and I was excited to see him. And now he's off working in corporate America, doing amazingly well. I saw one of his posts on LinkedIn recently. And so his career started off very differently because of the power of coaching. I have other young people on the campus that I've coached that have great stories to tell. But I'll tell you about one other person very quickly. She was not a young person like this 18-year-old. She was a surgeon, and she left Italy. And because of certain circumstances, she left Italy, had to start over in America. And she couldn't start over as a surgeon because they wouldn't accept her educational credentials. So she ends up at Rice working on a PhD to become a professor. She's going to go into academia and teach for the rest of her life. So I ended up coaching her. And she ended up doing amazingly well. In fact, she and a couple of these younger students, the other thing that happens at Rice is they train them to become certified coaches. So I've watched 18, 19-year-olds, and even this senior professional gets certified as a coach right there on campus. In fact, I just finished doing mentor coaching for one of the young ladies who's going to become, hopefully, my fingers are crossed, she submitted her application for ACC. She will become the first female to get certified. We've had several young men get certified. She's going to be the first female, and she will probably be the youngest in the United States, if not the world, if her credential goes through. So really excited to see what's happening there at the Doerr Institute for New Leaders at Rice, as they are using multi-generational coaching to change the lives of young people, and they in turn change the lives of others. Coaching needs change throughout a career. So you may start off needing a career coach as you're leaving college, but then later on, you need a life coach, excuse me, or a professional development coach. You may need a business coach. When we're working at the senior levels, we start thinking about leadership coaching and executive coaching. And somewhere along the line, sometimes we need financial coaches or fitness coaches, right? So to our conversation earlier, the coaching that you're using changes and takes on different shapes. You may even have multiple coaches at the same time, depending on what you're working on. The key is to continue to use coaches at different stages of your life. And as you're doing that, it's multi-generational coaching, working to develop leaders and get you to that next level. Something that's changed for people as they reach different levels is the type of coaching that they need. So laser coaching is becoming very popular. David Gregory, a friend of mine who's a member of the Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches, he was sharing with us, he was the head of coaching for Google until very recently. He was the head of coaching for all of Google. And he said that increasingly what he started to see is people did not want 1 hour sessions. These very senior, very busy tech execs said, listen, I don't have an hour. I need someone that can help me navigate a complex situation in 20 minutes or less. So you have to get really good at focused, targeted, laser coaching with these executives. And you couldn't work as a Google coach unless you could do that. So that's another generational shift, right? So multi-generational coaching, different skill set required to meet the needs. And oftentimes, obviously, you were talking about a younger demographic of coaches in this space. So what are those options? Additional options you can consider? Closely related would be mentoring. Now, it's not exactly coaching, but in some cases, it's a cousin of coaching. So you need a mentor. Sometimes you need someone that actually shows you specifically what to do. As coaches, of course, we guide you. You figure out the answer based on our toolkit of questioning, listening, right? But the mentor is going to do more specific targeting of showing you what you may need to do to be successful. Now, Carla Harris, the most famous Black woman on Wall Street, most powerful Black woman on Wall Street, quite frankly, she said, you can go a long time in your career without a mentor, but you won't go far at all without a sponsor. So she talks about having a sponsor. The sponsor does more than just maybe show you what's the best way to succeed in a role. They actually open doors for you. They advocate for you. They put their good name on the line to help you grow and develop. That is almost always a more senior person than you, even if it's not by age, but it's always a more senior person who has positional authority in an organization. So everyone needs a sponsor. Now, sometimes sponsors act like mentors, and that's a problem. They don't know the difference. But when sponsors truly understand that it's not about showing someone what to do, but about opening the door, putting your name on them, giving them air cover while they experiment with ideas that are out of the box, while they take on stretch assignments, that's how people grow and develop. You need a sponsor to help you do that. And that is another method, a cousin of coaching. All right. Now, oftentimes, I mentioned the idea that I was a podcast host in the past. I've stopped my show, but sometimes people like to still listen to it. And I look at the numbers and I see that even though I'm not putting out new episodes, people are still watching and listening to the past episodes. You might find my interview with Charlene Lee about the disruption mindset, or Maya Hushan about saving face as leaders, or Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, who's a member of your organization of interest, the world's #1 executive coach, teaching us some of his insights. So what makes multi-generational coaching so powerful? What makes it so powerful is it supports generations of employees like nothing else can. The give and take, the ability to help another leader, and then also to give back and helping just the way you were helped. As norms and attitudes have changed over the years, we need people to break those silos, not just stay with their generation, but cross over and help out other generations. It's a scalable approach to coaching, right? Younger can help older, older can help younger. We have technology and traditional human-to-human options available. It's not just a one-size-fits-all approach. Depending on your need, depending on your generation, there is a solution that can help you. And last but not least, don't forget about mentoring and sponsoring and the difference. And that even there too, it's a two-way street. It's not just, hey, mentor me, sponsor me, and it's all I'm going to take from you. No, if you've been mentored, if you've been sponsored, you must reward that person that put their good name on you by performing, but then also by helping them where you can, and certainly by paying it forward and helping others. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to have been here with you all today, and it is my sincere hope that you are now convinced more than ever about what makes multi-generational coaching powerful. I'll take any questions that you have at this time.
Just open up the mic and have a chat, everyone. Don't be shy.
I might start, Guy. Is that okay?
Yes, Gregory, go ahead.
Hi. Hey, Eddie. Thanks a lot for
Gregory,
the masterful demonstration and all the data that you gave. I got a question around, when we talk about generations, generation seems, to be uniform when we talk about them, like, Gen Z, millennial, etc. Do you think there are cultural differences, for instance, with the behavior? So you mentioned, the students being coached at Rice University, and I think it's the first one with Tom Koditz, as being the executive director, etc. To do that in the US, and I know that it's spreading, you think something like that could work in Asia?
Absolutely. In fact, that's a great question, Gregory, because what Rice did is basically build a template that other schools are now using. Ann and John Doerr wanted to change not just the students at Rice, but they wanted the blueprint to be shared with other universities and schools to change leader development overall, because fundamentally, what the founding director, Tom Koditz, says, that universities have failed students when it comes to leadership. You don't learn leadership in a classroom. So leadership and these life lessons come from a one-on-one personal relationship with a coach who helps you develop as an individual, not as a class. So what they've done is, at last count, 20 other universities, they basically handed over the playbook. Here's what we've done. Here's what works. They don't have to start from scratch. So 20 other universities are now in Canada, and I want to say Mexico has one, and others across the states. They have exactly duplicated what Rice is doing, and they're having great success with it.
Thank you, Eddie.
There's a question in the chat from Farah.
Okay.
Help me understand how do millennials coach on digital tech when the coachee, which in more senior position, does not really know what they want to achieve in that space?
That's a very good question. So it starts, I think, with any of the skills we use as coaches, asking them, what do they like? What do you want? What have you seen that you might like to try? And if they have no answers to that because they haven't seen anything that they'd like to try, they don't know, then I'd show them something that's pretty cool that I'm doing in technology and watch their eyes light up, right? For example, showing someone who has an iPhone. I wrote about this in my blog. My wife was always complaining about the fact when Apple did their last update, the URL that we type websites in, everywhere we go, it's on the top. Apple stuck it at the bottom for some reason. My wife was always complaining about that and her friends and such. So I figured out how to change that, move it back to the top where you're used to seeing it, right? Made her happy. Well, I shared that. So maybe it's something cool like that that you share with the executive, or it's something else that helps them communicate with their grandkids, right? Find out what they're interested in, show them one or two niceties, and you'd be surprised how not only will they adopt that, but it'll lead them to further exploration of other options.
Excellent, thanks for that. Tarek has a question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, Eddie. Thank you for the insightful session.
That's the world famous Tarek. Hello, sir.
Hi, my friend. It's always a pleasure to be with you and to learn from you. It was a great session, and I have a question for you on, I'm really a big fan of, helping leaders lead multi-generations and, that practice of reverse mentoring. So I was thinking of reverse coaching. Do you think it will be valuable for, the younger generation to coach, maybe the middle managers or even executives?
Absolutely. So one of those charts I show from ICF show that the average coach is an X, right? So they are the ones that are coaching those in the senior roles, and in a great number of cases. What I'm excited about is that we have younger folks like those kids I talked about starting to coach now, and they're not just coaching other kids on the college campus. A couple have showed up at their place of employment, and they've wrote back to the university and said, "Hey, wait a minute, this person says they're a certified coach. That can't be true, is it?" And the university writes back and says, "Oh yeah, they are certified. They've gone through the same training that adults go through, and they've got that international credential." I had a young lady who actually, she just reached out to me on LinkedIn, right? She saw a post I did, she connected to me, asked me a question. And her question was, she was almost 30. She had a master's degree. She still felt too young to coach. And that's because she was working at a place where the older folks were telling her, "You're just a kid. I've got kids your age. You're too young. You can't be a coach." Of course, she and I had a very different discussion. And if you look at her now, I'm just so proud of her because she is coaching. She did get her credentials and she's thriving.
Thanks a lot, Eddie. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Rick's got his hand up there.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks again, Eddie, for your great insights. Question, the first question, is there a progressive shift at all in the average age of a coach? Is it getting younger, or is it getting older, or is it remaining pretty steady?
Well, another good question. I point back to the ICF data. The ICF data laid it right in that Generation X territory. And it seems like most coaches are in that window. They are older. We love to see more younger folks. And that's why I'm excited about the work that Rice is doing, because through programs like that, we are producing younger coaches. But historically, folks, quite frankly, had a bias. One of the reasons I left IT is, as I was, my first career was IT. And I remember being that young whippersnapper, and we looked at older people and felt, "Oh, they can't know about technology. We're the ones with all the knowledge." And then I became one of those older people. And that's why I switched over to leadership development, right? Because it's assumed, once I started losing my hair and started turning gray kind of thing, it's assumed you have wisdom, right? Whereas in IT, you're assumed to be slower. So in leadership development world, people equate youth with an experience, and they don't want to be coached by the younger person. They equate gray hair, bald heads with wisdom. So good, fair, or otherwise, good, bad, that's just the biases that people bring. So I think in some ways that's made, and then like the young lady I mentioned, getting bad advice from older people, that's kept the younger folks from wanting to go into the profession. But I think that that's hopefully going to change.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Yeah, please go ahead.
I have a burning question. Eddie, I would say the Rice Institute, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith always says, if people don't want to be coached, don't waste your time. Mm-hmm. And in Rice, how did they get so many people to want and drive and yearn for coaching?
Yes, that's true. I don't like volunteer coaching. So what happens at Rice is they make people sign up for it, right? And I should say make people sign up for the coaching. And so it's not forced. So you do not have to take it. People voluntarily sign up for it. There's a questionnaire they have to go through, and there's some pre-work. So by the time that they actually start that first coaching session, they're ready. There have been some times that they've done all that and still found out that they weren't. But the great majority, once they start, they stick with it. And it's one of those things like anything else. Word gets out. Someone starts talking about, "Oh my goodness, I was having this challenge, that challenge, but I had a coach. That coach really helped me. Here's where I am as a result." And then the word starts to spread like wildfire. And folks, when they come to you, they say, "Hey, I signed up because of my roommate, or I signed up because of this story that got published." So it's been wonderful to see that positive peer pressure have it happen organically.
Thank you so much, Mr. Guy Rouse, President of CCMC Alumni, and everyone for joining the session here today. Time really flies. It's been 1 hour. We thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. I have one quick burning question with which hopefully you can answer in a couple of seconds. A real quick one, Eddie, before we go. So what is the #1 pitfall to watch out for when it comes to multi-generational coaching, and how do we overcome that? Just a quick one.
The #1 pitfall, I'd say, is perhaps making assumptions. Overcome making assumptions by remaining curious, as all coaches should. Curious and without judgment.
Thank you very much. That was short, sharp, and focused. Thank you very much. And I'm sure there's a lot of wonderful takeaways and insights out of today. I'll just give a quick 1-minute summary if I may. Well, you talked about really we are working in a more diverse workforce and community than ever before. We have more than 5 generations working together. And you also talk about like the example of why, for example, the younger generation would tend to ask why rather than the older generation. You see that shift of those among one of those changes. And so therefore, they don't really just take orders. They really want to understand the purpose, the reason behind doing things. So that is one of those key things, key takeaways. And then your emphasis about things being 2 ways, right? So the younger ones coaching the older ones coaching the younger ones. It's not just anymore the older ones coaching the younger ones. And what was also very astounding is that you have talked about the example, the stories about what has been achieved in Rice University. And I would reaffirm that we have seen that happen here, right here in the Penang Island, Malaysia as well, where many of our volunteer coaches have been coaching poor marginalized students as volunteer coaches that are actually in University Science Malaysia. And we have seen tremendous transformation and benefits for students receiving coaching at a young age. So therefore, your point about coaching starting from being students all the way to being in the workforce, even up to retirement and post-retirement, this is where coaching is perhaps embraced all the way through a lifetime. And then finally, your example really intriguing is that people may no longer be interested in 1-hour coaching sessions, because even more so, the younger generations today are much more impatient. They want faster results. And to be able to do coaching within 20 minutes, like what you said, the Google coach, to deal with an issue within 20 minutes. I think this is a great takeaway for all of us as coaches to be able to learn the skill, how to do speed coaching, really get results really fast. And also thank you for sharing the pitfall, which is, making assumptions that we think if we coach effectively in one generation, it might be effective across all generations. So that assumption itself could be the biggest pitfall. Thank you so much, Eddie. It's been a wonderful session. We hope to have you back in future and look forward to having more collaborations together with ITD World and CCMC Alumni. Let's give him a big hand. Eddie Turner. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for having me.
It's 9:33 p.m. We are 3 minutes over time, but thank you all so much. We look forward to seeing you all again in our future sessions. We have CCMC Alumni Let's Coach Masterclass as a monthly activity. So see you all again soon. Thank you once again, everyone. Eddie. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, good night.
Eddie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.